might pick it up, wrap it in the tissue that's in the cotton, take it with you. Find it in the room. What can you see there? Once a pair of swans, twice a single swan. Few swans make their songs on concretes. They sit on glassy surface. Swans make their except silver against space.
Claire Carroll lives in Somerset and is a PhD researcher at Bath Spa and Exeter Universities. She writes experimental fiction about the intersection of nature, technology and desire. Her short stories and poetry have been published by journals including The London Magazine, Gutter, 3am, Blue Knit, Perverse, the Oxonian Review and Short Fiction Journal. And The Unreliable Nature Writer is a collection of linked short stories that examines the interconnection of climate anxiety, surviving late capitalism, and dealing with personal loss. I'm not going to do mine.
Oh, why not?
Because it pales in comparison.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
I'm Joshua Jones. I'm a queer and autistic writer from Llanelli, South Wales, now living in Cardiff, alongside Ray, Howell and Oscar. I co-run WID, who are housed here in Cardiff. And for anyone who's unfamiliar with what we do, we're a sort of intersectional, interdisciplinary library and art space. We moved into this new building from the Capital Centre about 2 months ago, is that correct? Yeah. Still very much sort of finding our feet and kind of adapting our programme. So this is our first book launch in this new building, so thank you very much for coming and being a part of it. My own collection of short stories, Local Fires, was published last year by Parthian, and yeah, you can just buy it to find out what it's about.
Yeah.
But it's about Llanelli, and yeah, my experience has grown up there. Should we just go straight into chatting?
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, I'll give it just a bit of a sort of run of the event as well. So I'll be asking Claire some questions and interspersed with some readings. There'll be opportunity for you guys to ask questions at the end, and Claire will be signing all the books that you're going to buy as well. Even my ones.
Forge your signature.
Oh no! Don't forge mine. Just put your own in there.
Something rude. Love from Joshua Jones.
So yeah, I guess we just jump straight into it. So the Unreliable Nature Writer questions the idea of the narrator, that they're all-knowing and all-seeing, especially given the subject matter of the book of nature and ecology. And my first question is, what does unreliability mean to you? And what power does a narrator or a writer actually has?
I've talked about the idea of unreliability quite a lot, it feels like, since this came out. And it's an interesting word. I use it sort of facetiously a lot of the time, because I think when we were writing, well, definitely when we were doing our master's degrees and when we were writing our books, like, there's this sense of the an unreliable narrator is a bit of a buzzword, isn't it? So I think there's that thing of, I wanted to kind of lean into a sort of cliche, because an unreliable narrator is a narrator that you're kind of not feeling particularly safe with or stable with a lot of the time, and that makes for very good reading, like good book material. But I think I like to think of it in the sense of, not being self-assured enough. So when I started thinking about the climate emergency and writing about the climate emergency, I kind of I felt like I had to have everything figured out before I started writing. And actually, I came quickly to realise that was impossible. It would be impossible for anybody to do. So I think I was feeling like I couldn't even really rely on myself, but that is quite a kind of liberating perspective to write from, ultimately, and then to read from as well. So I think I started off trying to write stories with a degree of authority that I didn't have, and they were crap. And then I started writing from this place of not knowing anything and being kind of confessional, and then really sort of leading into and being quite silly about the fact that I didn't really know anything. And that's where the kind of voices for the stories kind of emerged. So that's what. So yeah, but unreliable is a funny word, and I think it still kind of feels like a buzzword almost. But it's interesting to kind of interrogate it and look at those different iterations of it.
I had quite an interesting relationship with unreliability as well, writing my own stories. I think I fell into the trap of writing about a place, writing about Llanelli, that I felt I needed to capture the town, whatever the town is, but ultimately I was writing up from memory of my sort of childhood years and teenage years, but also stories that my family had told me, my parents had told me of when they were growing up. And obviously that in itself is incredibly unreliable, because there's things that you miss out deliberately, things that you purposefully omit, and that you just simply forget. So that's why it's quite interesting to actually lean into it with the title and the sort of the segments going through the book that sort of break it up, and just being so blatant, like you are going to be getting this unreliable narrator. There's no subtext there, it's out there for you to.
Yeah, and I think the thing with unreliable narrators particularly in novels, you don't know from the outset that they're going to be unreliable. It's something that is developed, and then it becomes a kind of twist. And I think if you tell someone that that's what's happening, then you're left with somebody who's sort of admitting to something that is like failing, I suppose, which I think is interesting to read from that narrative perspective. And it's interesting what you were saying just then about your experience of writing the book, because I think there's that thing, like you say, of trying to reflect a time or a place where there's this need for accuracy, but nothing is ever going to be accurate. And also, why is accuracy important anyway? I mean, obviously there are certain times when it is, but fiction in its nature necessitates inaccuracy. So then, yeah, and so then when we kind of consider that, it's everything becomes very shaky, and I think that's quite an interesting place to write from.
Absolutely. So, as I said, we met while studying our MA at Bath University, and the first semester of the course we spent at Corsham Court campus. For anyone who doesn't know it, it's a sort of National Trust house in which the Lord lived on the top floor.
So weird.
It's very weird.
Weren't allowed to open certain doors because you go into the bit of the home that the Lord lived in, and he didn't like it for obvious reasons.
And peacocks roaming around. And there's a lake on the grounds. But then the rest of the academic year was spent in lockdown. This was 2019 to 2020. So we went from a place that represented, well, for me at least, privilege and how that links to the privatization of nature, to then what essentially was a bit of a free-for-all. We had to kind of find our own path to nature or back to nature, and became, and encountering a lot of private land within that as well, and there's so much privilege around, who could access nature within lockdown as well. But I was wondering, what effect did these two states have on your writing and your own experience of nature during this time?
That's a very interesting question. So definitely that transition from a kind of very big, I suppose like this big kind of vista and prospect of a year spent writing that then got kind of shrunk down to an experience that was very kind of physically enclosed and scary in the sense that the world was ending for a bit. That like shrinking down, although restricting, I think was really liberating intellectually, because I think none of us knew what was going to happen. Obviously COVID was scary and so there was not knowing what was going to happen in that sense, but I think it all felt a bit weird to be writing and kind of pursuing this thing against this landscape of uncertainty. But at the same time, for me, I think I had this whole plan of what I was going to write, which then went out of the window because of the way the pandemic was. So I think I was going to write speculative stories. Speculating in a more kind of conventional sense felt completely pointless because we were already living in a weird alternate universe because of COVID. So I think I just started to write in a way, write from this voice that was a bit kind of silly and irreverent almost, or kind of more for the indulgence of like our mates. and then it became easier and funnier, and then it started to work. I'm not saying it was very, very easy to write or anything, but I think that I think we all had an idea of what sort of writer we wanted to be. I certainly did, and I had to kind of deconstruct that and reconfigure it because of what had happened, because of the lockdown, and that in the end was a positive thing. So that was what the impact it had on my writing practice. I think in terms of the actual content that went into this book, I was thinking a lot about a kind of flattening of the way we experience the outdoors. So the way that you have to, the way that you were experiencing nature in your locality on this very set kind of performative loop every day for your special walk. And screens, there's a lot of screens. I think the merging of technology into the kind of organic world.
Well, technology is all the way through this book as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
The prime example for me is Rec Event. And I remember reading, I think, the very first draft you wanted to share.
Yeah.
And the form of it that's in the book is very different, at least in format, where it kind of takes the form of sort of like an email correspondence. So it's interesting that some of these stories kind of went from being very directly involved in the events within them to then being removed and this screen put in between.
Yeah, no, that's certainly the case with that. And I think there's another story, so the second story, I suppose, technically in here it's called Dream Reading. And that's a story that I wrote, which has been reconfigured into a new narrative. And I think that idea of kind of representing and recontextualizing things was something that I think maybe that came afterwards, though. I think the actual imagery and the kind of content of this it's like very internet, like it's very, things being tangible and intangible, and then intangible or real and then not real, and these kind of vast stretches of time that just go on forever. I think that's what impacts on this a lot, I think, and like really kind of terrifyingly good weather as well, like really clear blue, flat blue skies. That's what I think about when I think of the time.
My own sort of lockdown experience, writing about Llanelli, not being able to go to Llanelli. I ended up just dragging the little man around on Google Maps, just so I could look at the streets of my hometown and remember, that pub's there and that landmark's over there. When before I could get on the train and go there.
Yeah.
But because I was living in Bristol at the time, where we lived, there wasn't readily, like nature wasn't readily accessible, or at least like, sort of parks for a special walk. We had to walk for about 20 minutes, half an hour. And we had a heat wave, so you'd be knackered by the time you got there. Didn't want to explore.
Yeah, and it was that thing of like a heat wave, like a heat wave, and then this weird emptiness.
Was that, if I remember correctly, was that the year where like just all grass got burned?
Yeah.
Was that 2020? Was that the year that happened? Where everything just got scorched, and there was like a water shortage and stuff. Was it that year?
I don't know. See, they've 2021 are very merged.
Time just gets flattened, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't really consider myself a nature writer, and I don't think I was really paying attention to nature at the time. It wasn't until I actually moved to Cardiff that I started thinking about it more and incorporating it into my writing. But it was interesting, kind of in hindsight, looking back at sort of nature in that sort of hyper local capacity, and thinking about how like witnessing the grass in the Ganges get longer and longer and longer over the course of like a year or whatever, and hearing foxes in the garden and waking up and there's like a dead bird on the grass that I flung over the garden with a shovel. That was me in my lockdown. It was just a lot of dead birds.
Mine too.
Yeah, so like I said, I remember early drafts of Rec Event, but I also remember reading and editing early drafts of many of these stories, especially Quarter Horse, Come and Pick Me Up Immediately, Paddling. I think Paddling Pool might have been the first story of yours that I read.
No, I think Rec Event.
No, I don't. I can't.
Your
memory's better than mine usually.
I think it's Rec. No, because I think Rec Event was one of the first ones that I did write. It was Rec Event, then Infinite Husbands.
My mum made me shit, but I remember reading Paddling Pool and genuinely being fucked off. That something was that good, and feeling quite annoyed about it.
You didn't say that at the time. I think you did, actually.
I think I did.
No,
I think I actually
did.
sent you an email telling you how annoyed, how fucking good it is. But if I remember correctly, again, this is my own memory, which is probably wildly untrue.
Yeah.
But did Infinite Husbands, it started off as like a joke or a dare, right?
It was a joke for you. It was your joke.
Chat.
Yeah, no, it was because the first time we hung out to do a workshop, even before the lockdown, you misheard me. You thought I said that I had more than one husband, and then the rest of us who were in the conversation went with the joke, and I pretended that I had loads of husbands. And you were like, "No, but you can't. Like, you can't really." And I was like, "No, I really do. And then you realised it wasn't true, obviously. And then
everyone was taking the piss.
Everyone was taking the piss. Yeah, but that I wrote the story partly for the lols for you. Yeah.
And then you got a book
my
deal.
Favourite. Yeah. Immediately afterwards.
But it follows on to my question of where do you get your ideas for short stories, and is it sort of important for you to consider unlikely sources such as jokes, misheard conversations, and WhatsApp group chats?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, those to me seem like the most obvious places, really. I think, it's funny to interrogate where you get your ideas from, because your ideas are just your ideas, aren't they? I mean, I think
and it's really hard to say already.
I'm going to go over here and get an idea now, like that, but I think
it's idea o'clock.
It's like, hang on, I fancy an idea. But it is. I think there's a few of these where I can really remember the source material, like. Obviously, Infinite Husbands was an in-joke. There or Not There,
which continues to be.
Which is, actually, no, Infinite Husbands is true. There or Not There, the story we were talking about for those of you who haven't read the book, which I presume is probably everybody, it's a story about a bunch of dead, like a couple that wake up in the morning and there's dead birds all over the tarmac and they can't leave their house, which was a news story that I read about some birds on the floor. Like some people woke up in a street in Anglesey and there's a bunch of dead birds all over the floor. No one knew how they got there.
Which
They're
I
all
have
just
on here for you to read at the end.
Oh, okay.
Because I requested it.
Oh, nice. And my brain is boiling with ideas. Like the title of that was from a news article that Andrew sent me, I think, about a robot that could talk. So just like weird, and paddling pools, just I fancied writing about a paddling pool. Well, that's not a very deep answer, but like, so I think some of them are.
But also like the surge in people buying paddling pools during lockdown as well.
Yeah. But I think it's funny asking anyone who's like any type of creative practitioner, like how you get your ideas, where you get them.
It's nice to kind of look back though, isn't it? Just think it came from this article, from an in-joke, but then it becomes something else entirely. Paddling pool for me, you say it's not very. It wasn't very deep. You just want to write about paddling pools, but there was
like a paddling pool. Lol.
But there was a surge of people buying them, off Amazon and whatnot during lockdown, and then putting them on scorched earth, and this just our capacity to just try and enjoy ourselves and have a good time in the face of impending doom.
Yeah, and the cost of a good time, what the idea of like ephemera and something becoming ephemeral even before you've bought it, like thinking about its longevity and its what happens after you own it, what happens after you throw something away. But I think kind of thinking about that in terms of, again, like not from a didactic point of view, because we all know what happens to plastic when we're not owning it anymore. Like it's not very interesting to write about that, and it's not for me to remind people of that. But I think I'm interested in like the grief or the sort of anxiety that I feel around the objects that amass in my life. And so I was kind of reflecting that, I guess, rather than saying, don't buy a paddling pool, dig a hole in the garden instead and get in that.
On that note, well, I have it on here that you're going to read from Infinite Husbands, but...
I read whatever you want. I read paddling pool.
Do you do Infinite Husbands or do you want to do paddling pool?
I read either of them. We've just been talking about paddling pool, but we have also talked about Infinite Husbands.
What do you guys want?
They don't know.
No, you don't have time. Let's do... Infinite Husbands, there you go.
It's funnier.
It is funnier.
And, can't find it.
I'll just read paddling pool to everyone in the car park.
Yeah. Running through the car park. Sorry, I'm just going to find it now.
There is a content page.
There is, isn't there? But I like to just flick until it arrives on the page. Okay. It's called Infinite Husbands. It's true, Josh. I'll let you in on a little secret. I have a lot of husbands. I don't have time to tell you about all of them, but we could talk about some, maybe 10, unless I get tired, and then I'll stop telling you about them. But please don't be under any illusion that these are the most important husbands, or the most recent. And please don't ask me any questions about how I maintain a life with so many husbands. That's none of your business. My first husband is handsome but quick to emotion. When I first met him, he cried a lot about how his mother had abandoned him as a child. She ran off with a swimming instructor and was never seen again. His father couldn't cope, and as a result, my first husband was very needy. But I looked after him. I gave him what he needed, gave him what he hadn't had from his mother, and in time, he became less needy. We don't see each other very often nowadays, but he knows I love him. My second husband is hilarious and cruel and devastatingly handsome with watery blue eyes. He is so handsome that I can't even think about him for too long as my heart rate rises unbearably and I have to lie down. He has been missing for quite some time. My third husband looks exactly like me in every way, to the point where we are often mistaken for the same person. He He likes me to cut my hair very short to match his. This can upset the other husbands, but not one of them is brave enough to fight husband number 3 over it. He is prone to aggressive outbursts. Once we were in a pub having Sunday lunch when a man at the next table bumped into husband number 3, spilling some of his drink onto our table. Before I knew what was happening, husband number 3 had jumped up and flung his own drink, glass and all, into the man's face. The man screamed and my husband roared back at him. My husband was eventually dragged from the pub by 2 police officers, his shirt ripped and covered in the man's blood. I bought him that shirt. It was a Paul Smith one. My 4th and 5th husbands are twins, 2 sides of the same coin. They are musicians in a band together. One plays the drums and the other sings. Now, I know what you're thinking, and you can stop right there. It's not all like that. It's not at all like that. They hate being fetishized in that way. They are very sweet boys, sweet men, beautiful mirror images. I prefer one over the other, but I would never tell them which, or you, so you can stop asking. My 6th husband is very elusive, but is by far one of the most intelligent men I have ever met. He lives near the sea. It's a long journey, but I visit whenever I can. He works as a scientist, monitoring the ocean for pollution levels. The house he lives in dates from the early 20th century and is an excellent example of the Art Deco style, with huge windows that look out over the beach. The light inside the house is exquisite. The sun bounces off the sea and reflects on the walls and ceilings. He favours minimalism, doesn't keep much in his house. He's very precise, this husband, neat and orderly. He likes that I'm not like this. He likes that I am artistic, messy, even chaotic at times. He likes to think he can smooth my rough edges with his clean, scientific precision. I love staying with him. We walk along the beach in the wind, watching oyster catchers skittering in and out of the little waves that break on the foreshore. Sometimes, on a clear day, you can see pilot whales far out to sea. My 6th husband doesn't like me to stay for long, but he likes for us to be in almost constant contact. He gave me this device. Here it is. See? No, it's not a mobile phone. I think it's some sort of tracker, something they use a lot in oceanography. Can you see the garden any better now that the sun is coming out? Those tulips look nice in the light, don't they? We planted them all when we moved here. I say we, but it was all me. It took a long time, but it's worth it. Yes, they really are that huge and nearly impossible to grow. They're quite rare too. Take a good look. They'll be gone soon. My 7th husband is vicious and manipulative. If he shows up while you're here, you should hide, or, better still, slip out the French windows into the garden. I'll distract him. No, honestly, don't worry. I'm not expecting him for hours. My 8th husband is much nicer, more dependable and much older than me. He has white hair that springs back from his forehead. He's very serious, but wise and calm too. We walk for hours together over fields and woodland. He likes to talk about philosophy. My mind wanders as he talks. I let his voice wash over me like music as we move through slices of evening sunshine. He's had the same pair of shoes for 30 years. No, he doesn't live here. They don't all live here with me. That would be absurd. I met my 9th husband last year. He's tall and drinks heavily. He's the sort of person who wears novelty clothes all the time, a sweatshirt made from neon faux fur, brightly coloured trainers, slogan T-shirts. When I first met him, he was dancing wildly at a party. He noticed me and pulled me towards him. This husband smiles and jokes all the time, even when he's sober. He's a clown, a lovable fool. Most women don't look at him twice, not because he's unattractive, but because he's loud, drunk, ridiculous, prone to clumsiness. But that's what I like most about him. He calls me princess, but he does it ironically. We laugh so hard that we cry sometimes. Once, he got really drunk and high and he overheated and had a seizure on the dance floor of a nightclub. I went with him to hospital. The ambulance screeched through the cool morning air as dawn broke over the city. He cried like a baby when he regained consciousness. Promised me he'd never scare me like that again. I need a rest now, a glass of water or something. Do you need anything? Let's open the windows and let the air in at least. Why don't you go out there and take a look at those tulips? Honestly, this is your last chance. The company doing the digitising says it'll look exactly the same, but I'll know. Just go out there for 5 minutes, have a proper look, take a picture of them. You won't regret it. I didn't expect to meet my 10th husband so soon after the incident with my 9th. I had thought that perhaps I should slow down a little, take stock. But love finds you sometimes, doesn't it? It creeps up on you when you least expect it. Sometimes you're just walking along, minding your own business, or else looking out of the window on the train, and it comes at you, fluttering past you on the breeze. There's nothing you can do if love finds you. You just have to give in, let the current pull you under. No, that's not how I've met all my husbands. Many of them I've pursued, courted, researched, even stalked if I've had to. I'm not passive about finding them, but sometimes you have to give in to love if it comes hurtling towards you. My 10th husband is delicate, sensitive. He's not as tall or as handsome as some of my other husbands, but there's something in the curve of his cheekbones, the way he smiles, radiantly but self-consciously. We met on the way to a conference. He sat next to me on the train. It was an ultra-fast one, you know, with a glass roof, and the sky sped past above our heads as we talked. We got drinks, realised we liked the same music. It felt easy and natural. He glanced out of the window and mentioned his significant other very quickly, as if he didn't really want me to hear. He wasn't wearing a ring, I noticed, but people don't nowadays, do they? When we arrived at the hotel where the conference was being held, we walked in together as though we were a couple. Instinctively, we both reached out for the other's hand, but let go quickly, laughing, eyes sparkling. The hotel was a vast expanse of white, like a ship, with the flat blue sky behind it. Our rooms were on different floors, but he knocked on my door before dinner that first night. We were dressed formally for work, but I had put on perfume and lipstick. We walked past a wide mirror in the hotel lobby, and I had to catch my breath when I saw our reflections. I could tell he did too. Have you ever been in love? Yes, all right. But have you ever fallen in love without meaning to? And have you ever loved more than one person at once? And have you ever loved a great many people? An infinite number, all at the same time? Well, I suppose not, no. Otherwise you wouldn't be here, asking me all these questions. I can't talk much more about husband number 10. We need to be careful, or his significant other will find out. It would hurt my husband deeply if his significant other knew about me, and I can't bear the thought of him in pain. For this reason, we can't speak in person very often, but he leaves me messages, signs, to let me know he's thinking of me. Just the usual, you know, squiggles on walls, soft melodies, cloud formations, tea leaves, things like that. It's kindest that way. I do think about his significant other from time to time. I'm not a monster. I'm not. I know what the significant other looks like. Very beautiful, I'll admit, and I picture them sometimes lying in bed next to one another as my husband sleeps peacefully. I imagine the significant other's eyes wide open in the dark, tears pooling in the corners. Husband 21 is broad and confident with a kind smile. He plays basketball professionally. He has boundless energy, smooth skin, strong shoulders, long dark eyelashes. I watch him sleeping sometimes, and I stay as quiet as possible, holding my breath so he doesn't wake up. Husband 148 is vast, as wide as he is tall, with rolls of pale double chins. He's exceptionally good at maths and can solve riddles better than anyone I know. He's an absolute riot at parties. There's another, I forget which number now, who has long limbs. He looks like a daddy long legs. He can juggle and ride a unicycle at the same time. He has an unpredictable streak, something erratic and undiscoverable. Under all that jollity, though. Stay away from him if you can. I haven't seen husband 86 for years, but we are connected by a thin silver thread. It's almost invisible and many miles long. I miss him, but it's comforting to know that he's there at the end of that thread, and I could heave and pull him to me if ever I needed him. There are more I could tell you about. I could go on for hours and hours. I can see them all now if I shut my eyes, all lined up neatly like binary code, stretching out forever. Imagine any husband, and he has been mine, or is mine, or will be. No, it's fine. I'm not tired. I can see that the light's going, though. Is it? Or is that just me? I'll continue. You don't mind, do you? This is the last of these gardens. Everything will be in the clouds soon. Are you listening? I was just saying that it'll all be gone soon. Gone and not gone, or whatever. It's hard to know anymore what's there and what's not there, isn't it? I suppose you're used to it. You've never known any better.
Also, how does your art and the work that you're doing now, such as the installation on our side of the room, Fair, Fine, Brisk, relate to your prose writing?
Yeah, so the first part of the question, I had a really crap time on my BA and was terrible at it, like terrible at being at a prestigious art school. That wasn't all entirely my fault. Like it was probably, I'd say, about 80% their fault. But
You gave
but it was
yourself
the
20% there.
naughties. They didn't have pastoral care. But I wasn't very good at making objects, really. I just wanted to make narratives, and I didn't find a medium that was suitable for me, that I was good enough at, that I wanted to kind of do it more. So I made a lot of kind of video and photo based work, and but I think like really what I was interested in was narrative, and yeah, like you say, how narrative kind of configures in space, like place, sorry, not space, outer space. And I then spent, yeah, like a decade doing kind of curatorial, like arts facilitation type stuff and events management, really looking about how we like working for various organisations, but very much being a manager of projects rather than somebody that had any kind of creative practice of their own. And then yeah, and like I wrote all the time in my head and privately, and then wanted to return to academic study. I always knew I wanted to do it at some point, but like lots of life things lifed. And then the opportunity presented itself, and actually I'm really glad, because for a long time I really regretted my choices. Like I really regretted going to like the kind of highfalutin wanky art school when I probably should have gone somewhere a bit softer and less Londony, where I would have been looked after better. But I was a very obstinate 19-year-old that was like, no, I'm going to go there and be really cool. And actually I went there and yeah, just partied too much and yeah, made poor choices. But yeah, but actually I am really pleased, because the one thing that it did do was give me very rigorous critical skills, so that then when like going back into academic study in my like mid-30s, I was just like, this is nothing. Like this is like, you know, the level of critique was perfectly managed. Like I didn't care, you know, you go at things with more maturity, you kind of don't care anymore. So yeah, so it's definitely like I feel like very at peace with that being the right time. And then yeah, but then I think all of that configures in the other stuff. So I was commissioned to do that piece by a curator that I know. It was a collaboration with Andrew, like that. So it was going to be this. My part was always the writing, was always the text, and then I knew that Andrew would make a nice soundtrack in response to that. Because otherwise it's just my voice saying things. But so it was me. Well, our piece is the kind of one side of the project, and then there's another artist who made another artwork which is very different, but another sound walk. So the idea is that you listen to those and walk a kind of route around Frome, which is the town where we live, where the work was commissioned.
Was it interesting hearing the piece played here in like so completely out of its original context?
I liked it more, actually.
Yeah.
I haven't done the walk myself, and I don't know. Like, I mean, I have done the walk, but I haven't put it in my ears and worked out if it works.
I made the artwork. I haven't done the walk.
No, I mean, I did the walk lots of times when I was preparing it, but I never listened to it in situ all the way through. And I quite like that it's quite, because one of the parts of the brief that was really confusing was that it was something that was commissioned during lockdown, and it was supposed to be a kind of COVID-proof walk. So it was meant to be something that you could also listen to at home. So it kind of didn't really, so it was ludicrous. The whole thing was ludicrous.
You reading it like, have these people ever fucking walked?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, so it's nice hearing it in the space, and especially here, I think with this kind of like office space that you've taken over, it feels very like post-apocalyptic in here, and that piece feels post-apocalyptic
and bring
in lots
in
of ways.
the outdoors in a little bit as well.
Yeah, but also then
this took way longer than it needed to.